Have you ever truly stopped to think about death? Not in a fleeting, uncomfortable way, but deeply, fully. It's one of the few universal experiences that every single one of us will face, yet it's also one of the most misunderstood and avoided topics in human existence. Death. Just the sound of the word stirs something inside us, a chill, a sense of finality, or perhaps even fear. But what is it really? Is it the end, the beginning, or simply a transition, a doorway to something we can't yet comprehend? From the moment we are born, our lives are, in many ways, a slow march toward death. It's the one certainty that underpins every breath, every heartbeat. And yet, we spend so much of our time pretending it doesn't exist, pushing it to the furthest corners of our minds. Why? Is it fear, denial, or perhaps the hope that by ignoring it, we can somehow outsmart it? Let's pause for a moment and consider, what if death isn't something to fear, but something to understand? What if, instead of running from it, we could embrace it as part of the very fabric of life itself? The truth is, death has been a central focus of human thought for as long as we've existed. Ancient philosophers, poets, and spiritual leaders have pondered its meaning, searching for answers. Some saw it as a release, others as a punishment, and still others as a mystery to be unraveled. But the one thing they all agreed on is this: death is not just the end of life, it is a mirror that reflects how we live. Think about it. Knowing that we will one day die gives meaning to everything we do. It's the ticking clock in the background of our days, reminding us that our time here is finite. Without death, there is no urgency, no value to the fleeting moments we so often take for granted. It's what makes a sunset so breathtaking, a goodbye so poignant, a love so profound. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This isn't a call to live in fear. It's a call to live fully, to stop wasting time on things that don't matter. Death isn't here to rob us of life. It's here to remind us to cherish it. But let's be honest, most of us don't live this way. Instead, we treat death like an unwelcome guest, avoiding eye contact, hoping it will leave if we ignore it long enough. We distract ourselves with busyness, with plans, with the illusion that we have all the time in the world. And in doing so, we miss the very essence of life itself. It's ironic, isn't it? We fear death so much that we sometimes forget to live. We cling to the past, worry about the future, and spend our days chasing things that won't matter in the end. But death doesn't care about our fears or distractions. It will come for us all, whether we're ready or not. The question is, when it does, will we feel we've truly lived? This is where the conversation about death becomes transformative. Because if we can face it, really face it, something shifts. The fear starts to fade, replaced by a profound sense of clarity. We begin to see what truly matters, what we want to leave behind, how we want to spend our days, who we want to be. Consider the story of someone on their deathbed. It's often said that people don't regret the things they've done, they regret the things they didn't do, the love they didn't express, the dreams they didn't chase, the moments they let slip away. Death, in its final moments, strips away all the superficial layers, leaving only what's real. And in that raw, unfiltered truth, we find life's greatest lessons. But here's the thing, you don't have to wait until the end to learn those lessons. You can start now, right here, in this moment. Ask yourself, if I were to die tomorrow, would I be at peace with how I've lived? Have I loved fully, laughed deeply, forgiven freely? Have I left the world just a little better than I found it? These aren't easy questions, but they're the ones that matter. Because in answering them, we begin to live with intention. We stop chasing the things that don't bring us joy. We let go of grudges, of fear, of the need to control everything. We open ourselves to the beauty of the present moment, the only moment we truly have. And yet, death is not just a personal journey, it's a shared experience. We grieve for those we've lost, and we wonder how we will be remembered when our time comes. Grief, though painful, is a testament to the love we've shared. It's the price we pay for caring so deeply, for allowing someone to leave an imprint on our hearts. In many ways, death is a teacher. It teaches us to value connection, to hold our loved ones close, to say the things that need to be said. It reminds us that life is fragile, that nothing is guaranteed, and that every goodbye could be the last. It's not a lesson we want to learn, but it's one that makes us human. And then there's the question of what happens after death. It's a mystery that has fascinated and terrified us for centuries. Do we go somewhere? Do we become something else? Or is death simply the end, a return to the nothingness from which we came? The truth is, we don't know. And perhaps that's the point. Maybe the mystery of death isn't something to solve, but something to accept. Maybe it's a reminder that life is precious precisely because it's fleeting, that the unknown doesn't have to be feared. It can be embraced with curiosity, with wonder, with the knowledge that whatever comes next is beyond our control. In the end, death is not the opposite of life. It's a part of it. It's the final note in the symphony, the last stroke of the brush on the canvas. And like any great work of art, its meaning lies not just in the end, but in the journey that led to it. So let us not run from death. Let us not pretend it doesn't exist. Instead, let us face it with courage, with grace, and with the understanding that it is a part of what makes life so extraordinary. Let us live in a way that, when our time comes, we can look back and say, I loved, I laughed, I gave, I grew, I lived. Because in the end, that's all death is asking of us, not to fear it, but to use it as a reminder to cherish the time we have, to hold each moment as sacred, each connection as precious, each breath as a gift, and when the time comes to take our final breath, to let it go with peace, knowing that we have lived a life worth living. If you want to get basic overview of the things, subscribe our channel for more info.